Never little wanna be gangster tryna play hard. Ding dong, 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 ding.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel. On nootropics, on testosterone, on feeling, performing, and functioning awesomely, I am your host, Ryan Michael Ballos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell to get notified of all the content. Get the YouTube app to get notified in real time. 1,400 videos of free content are supported by Epic Nootropic products. I'll explain them later, but just as an introduction, number one, the Cortex stack. And number two, the Torque stack. And by the way, the Torque nootropic stack is still buy one, get one free. The coupon code is TORQBOGO. You need to hire me for biohacking consulting. You can do that in under a minute at livecortex.com. All right, friends, 1 month on TRT. My whole life has changed. Now, honestly, it's not that different. You got to remember my testosterone levels were between, well, on the very low end, 770, on the very high end, 1250, but usually sitting around 900 for quite some time. So I'm used to what it feels like to have high test. However, there are some differences in exogenous testosterone as well as like really high peaks. So I've been on TRT for a month. My dose is 140 milligrams. I'm dosing that intramuscularly. And as I mentioned in the video where I introduced this, my numbers were starting to drop. I'm a 39-year-old man, and I was like, you know what? I want to experiment, but I also just want to kind of get a hold of this. So right into it, here are the things that I've noticed 1 month on TRT. Number one, it's a bit less of a struggle for me to stay lean. You know, there's a thing called recomp where when you have more androgens in your body, the food that you eat, and even if you go excess in calories, it doesn't store as easily as fat. Now, the research on this is pretty clear. You synthesize more protein, you preserve more lean mass, and your body is more likely to a certain degree, to a certain extent, which does have limitations, to store your energy as muscle mass, preserve lean muscle mass, and not so much as fat. So I noticed that my calories, they're sort of partitioning a little bit more toward muscle building and staying lean as opposed to just becoming a fatty. Number two, since I'm dosing basically twice a week, you could call it, I do have peaks and troughs, which means, I've got a peak of testosterone, and then a few days later, then the estrogen will peak from the aromatization of that testosterone. And on the estrogen peaks, I definitely feel a little more emotional than usual. Like I might get sentimental or whatever. Like I've always actually cried on fucking certain movies, but that emotional part is maybe a little more enhanced during a very brief period, sort of toward the latter end of that first dose, which is fine. I actually think it's important to be able to feel, it's not anything drastic, and I don't really have a problem with it. Next, my cuts are easier. So I don't go in a traditional bulk cut cycle because I just don't like blowing up and then having to like lose a bunch of weight thereafter. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I sort of intermittently bulk cut. I'll be in a bulk for 2-3 days. I'll gain as much muscle as possible and go hard at the gym with all that energy for those days. I'll kind of level back out, be at maintenance, and then, in a deficit for like 2 days thereafter. And I found that it actually helps me to build muscle while not getting like fat. So far a month on TRT, my cuts are easier in that it's easier to push the same amount of weight while I'm cutting, which is unusual for me. It's like definitely a noticeable perk. And I get tired less easy in a cut while I'm working out on TRT. Next, so far, no hair loss. That's something that, because of DHT, prolactin, and the fluctuation in hormone. It's not just DHT, for the record. It's the fluctuation, it's prolactin, it's other things. All those things affect hair follicles. People tend to, if they have a, proclivity to male pattern baldness, they accelerate male pattern baldness on TRT. I haven't noticed any of that for me. My genes are pretty stable, though. My dad, at my age, still had a full head of hair. But also, what I've come to learn in consulting men on TRT, because before I got on TRT, I worked with guys who were on TRT. I ran their protocols, their schedules. I changed their protocols to optimize them. So I've been doing this for a while. What I learned is that the less the frequency, and I'm talking about once a week or once every 2 weeks, that's when you really get the most hair loss. This is what I've come to learn after consulting many men on this. What looks like to be the case in these like situations is that they're troughing so substantially from this initial peak of testosterone from the shot that they took 2 weeks ago. But by the end of that 2 weeks, they're troughing so significantly, meaning testosterone levels are dropping substantially, that the fluctuation in hormones is like huge. Therein seems to be where a lot of people experience a great degree of hair loss. Because again, it's not just DHT. People want to make this so simple. It's not, you need to go in the literature and look at prolactin's effect on hair follicles. But importantly, fluctuations in sex hormones and androgens particularly, and their effect on hair follicles. If there comes a point where that happens, where I start to notice some sort of hair loss, then I will probably inject more frequently. Next thing I notice when I go out at nighttime, which is somewhat rare, like on the weekends and maybe sometime like on a Wednesday in the city here in Pittsburgh, I feel like I have more energy to stay out a little bit later. I'm the type of guy that like when it's 9 o'clock, I'm having my last drink, I'm like, I don't want to drink past that. And I'm not like, let's fucking stay out. Like I have shit to do. I have two businesses to run. I've got like, sleep to get. I want to feel good every day. And so I'm usually in sooner. But I noticed on TRT, like, some of these nights where I've gone out to dinner or whatever, like I was okay staying a little later, maybe having like one more drink, and I basically like felt fine. After 1 month, well, it was basically about 26 days or something into TRT, I went and got labs drawn, and my total T was 980, and that was a day and a half roughly after injection. Kind of just after my peak, I was sitting at 980. I'm going to have to monitor that because I've been to 1250 before, I've been to 1100, and I don't like how I feel in those higher numbers. I have side effects basically. So, I've got to run that. I'm going to run that again, monitor my own, how I feel, and I'm going to run it again in 2 weeks. If it goes above 1,000, then I'm going to have to change my dose from 140 to probably, 125, 130, something to that effect. Don't like getting past a certain number. I do not feel good. Estradiol right around that same time, which is the time where estradiol technically should be peaking, was sitting at 30. It was actually 31 picograms per milliliter, which is great for me. One interesting thing, so the next thing that's been happening is I seem to have more clear dreams, which is an indication of higher quantities of brain acetylcholine. At least that's what my memory tells me. But the interesting thing about it is like I seem to remember my dreams during the day. Like usually, if you have like a really intense dream, you can't remember it. I mean, even minutes later, it's like fading as you wake up, and then at breakfast time or whatever, you've forgotten the dream. In the last, especially 2 weeks or so, I've been noticing like I remember my dreams. Like I'll think about my dreams in the middle of the day. Heart rate and blood pressure. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people going on TRT are a little concerned about, which you have the right to be, because testosterone does change your blood. It makes you produce more red blood cells, and some of the effects of actual exogenous T can make your heart rate rise as well as your blood pressure if you're not careful. Now, a host of other factors go into this. It's not just testosterone. It's obviously your sodium intake, it's your diet, it's your water intake, it's whether or not you do cardio, it's whether or not you work out. All these things play a role. And I have, in the last 30 days, seen a 5 beats per minute increase in my heart rate. Now, this actually happened to me when I raised my testosterone with HCG, like 6 months ago or whenever that was. And, it was actually a higher heart rate jump back then. It was like 10 beats per minute, which, I'm sitting around 50, 55. It takes it to 60, 65. But now with a 5 beats per minute increase, it's sitting at like 60, which is like very healthy and good. I had my hematocrit tested because that's one of the things that tends to raise or can raise on testosterone, and it's basically where it's been for the last 2 years, which is good. Blood pressure is utterly the same. I've always been on the low end of normal. That's been the case since I've been very young. I don't know, doctors used to liken it to or chalk it up to the fact that I was in the army and fucking used my body all the time and was a runner for many years. My blood pressure's like never ever been high, so it's basically still the same. Sleep is still good. Again, when I got on it, I noticed a little bit better of a sleep, like sort of as if I was sleeping deeper when I'm sleeping, getting to sleep a little easier. And then again, like it's like instead of waking up at 6, I can wake up at 5:30 with 6.5 hours of sleep and feel just the same. The last thing I've noticed after 1 month, and I think after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, there's going to be much more to report, is I'm a little bit more motivated throughout the day, which is interesting because the area where I've seen it be most impactful is I need less nootropics. I need lower doses of certain nootropics that are dopamine affecting or dopamine releasing. I still take a good degree of nootropics, but hey, like lightening the processing load, like the sort of liver burden is always a good thing. Other miscellaneous stuff, I don't know, injecting is like fine. I've never really been afraid of needles. It's like not a thing. Doing it yourself is interesting. I have experience with subcutaneous administration of things like PT-141. Obviously, subcutaneous administration of HCG. That's how I was dosing HCG, right in my belly fat. But I've never injected anything intramuscularly until TRT. I'm using Slin pins, basically insulin needles. They don't hurt at all, and they're very, very easy to get in. And you can get what is typically called shallow IM, shallow intramuscular, where you still hit the muscle, but it's not very deep into the muscle, as to prevent scar tissue and things of this nature. And so I'm injecting in my thighs. I'm not like switching, going to my delts, going in the glutes or anything else. It's just like I just switch legs. Every 4th day it'll be my left leg. 4 days later it'll be my right leg. I'm going kind of center mass on my thigh and then shifting about an inch to the right. And so far, with however many injections I've done so far, I've not hit a blood vessel. I've not even really so much as bled. You know, and I'm usually injecting like in the morning, so it's like 5:45 in the morning or something, like right before the gym, which is actually fucking awesome because then I've got testosterone entering my muscles are dispersing it throughout my blood, and then I go to the gym and kill it. Other things, confidence levels, I don't know, maybe I'm a little more assertive than usual. I don't know. Again, I'm used to having pretty high levels of testosterone, or adequate levels for me, so I can't say that that's like a huge difference. I'll show you my physique. My physique really hasn't changed. I had a shoulder injury that basically got better in the first couple weeks of TRT, and then on my other shoulder, there's starting to be some pain because, yeah, I go to the gym every day and I lift heavy weights. So I've basically been on somewhat of a deload on some days, so like I don't really expect to be gaining a ton of muscle during this time. My physique is fine the way that it is. But what I think, you know, having stable high levels of testosterone is doing is allowing me to preserve the muscle mass that I had, even when I'm not lifting like very, very heavy weights. I'm just kind of going for high rep stuff at the moment. And although it's a little more, I don't know, tedious or whatever, it's fine. And, you know, I'm happy with my shape. That's it, man. 1 month on TRT. Have I turned into the Hulk? How's everything changed? Am I walking around with a fucking boner all day? Nah. Now, again, this is only 1 month on TRT, right? So, like, I mean, as time goes on, again, based on my dose and depending on what happens in the coming weeks, I may have to change the dose and modify it again. In just about a couple weeks, I'm going to go back, rerun total test, free test, estradiol, see where everything is, and then make adjustments if I have to from there. Now, obviously on TRT2, there are blood markers that you should monitor. You should definitely monitor your lipids. So again, when I go and run total tests this next time around, I'm going to get a whole panel of lipids and kind of just see where they are. I'll probably look at hematocrit again in like a month. And that is pretty much it, my friends. If you like any sentence, any point, any bit of this content, please subscribe to the channel. We are supported by Epic Nootropic products. Stop here. Look, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business person, or if you're a productive person or wants to be productive and your brain doesn't function well, or you'd like it to function at the highest levels, we've got 2 nootropic stacks. First of them is the Cortex stack, been on the market for 8 years, motivation, mental energy, verbal fluency, and a lot of that sort of dopamine-like energy. The link for our stack Cortex is in the description of this video. Secondarily, the Torque stack. This is a big one. I mean, this stack has blown up since we launched it. I built and crafted a stack for 6 to 8 hours of solid brain energy. It's a stimulant, but the feeling is clean. You don't get jitters, you don't get side effects, you just feel like a way better, more optimized version of yourself with Torque. You can buy it in the description below, and right now, the Torque nootropic stack is buy one, get one free. Buy a bottle, you will literally get another bottle for free without paying for it. Coupon code to do that is TorqueBOGO. You enter that directly at checkout. And that product you can find in the description below or at livecortex.com. Lastly, if you need to hire me for consulting, I am a biohacking consultant. I can help you dial your TRT protocol in, raise your testosterone naturally, give you guidance and advice on what you may need to do for whatever biohacking issue that you're having. Also, formulate nootropic regimens that are targeted toward you, energy regimens that are targeted toward you, resolve major issues, and host of things in between. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. Pleasure being with you guys. So much more content to come, so stay tuned, my friends. Hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you on the next one.